Welcome back, podcasters. Today we're tackling a big topic, branding your podcast. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your show to the next level, a strong brand is what will help your podcast stand out, connect with your audience, and build your loyalty over time. Stick with us as we break down the key elements of podcast branding, from finding your niche to crafting a memorable style. Let's dive in. The first step in branding is knowing who your podcast is for and why it exists. Ask yourself, what is the core theme of my podcast? This could be comedy, self-help, history, or even something ultra-specific like sustainable living in urban areas. Who is my target audience? Are you speaking to young entrepreneurs, fitness enthusiasts, or fans of true crime? Knowing your audience helps you create content that resonates deeply with them. What value does my podcast offer? Think about how your podcast benefits listeners, whether it's to entertain, inform, or inspire. Defining these elements gives you a foundation. Your niche and purpose are what makes you memorable to the people you want to reach. Next up, let's talk about your podcast name and tagline. This is often the first thing new listeners will see, so you want it to be catchy, clear, and reflective of your show. Name. Choose a name that hints at your topic and tone. Avoid overly complex names. Short and memorable is best. Tagline. Your tagline should tell listeners what your show is about and in just a few words. Think of it as your elevator pitch. For example, if you have a true crime podcast, a tagline like "Uncovering the world's coldest cases" gives instant insight into your content. Once you have a name and tagline, you're already closer to a strong brand identity. Now, let's move on to visual branding. This includes your podcast logo, color scheme, and typography, which play a huge role in creating a recognizable brand. Here are some tips. Logo. Your logo is the face of your podcast. Use bold, simple graphics and avoid too much text. You want it to look good on any platform, whether it's in a tiny thumbnail or a larger image. Color scheme. Choose 2 to 3 colors that reflect your podcast's tone. If your podcast is light-hearted and fun, consider bright colors. For a serious journalistic podcast, you might go with darker, muted tones. Typography. Select 1 or 2 fonts that are easy to read and match your podcast's vibe. Use these consistently on cover art, social media posts, and any promotional materials. Remember, consistency in your visual branding helps listeners immediately recognize your podcast on any platform. Now that we've covered visuals, let's talk about tone and style. Tone is how you communicate with your listeners, and style is how you make your show unique. Define your voice. Is your podcast conversational, formal, humorous, or reflective? Knowing your voice helps you stay consistent and attract the right audience. Structure and format. Decide on your episode format. Will it be solo, co-hosted, or interview-based? Maybe you want a storytelling approach or segments that break up the content, like quick tips or listener questions. Catchphrases or signature elements. Many successful podcasts have a signature sign-off opening phrase that adds personality and becomes memorable for listeners. A distinct tone and style give your podcast personality. It's what makes your show feel unique and familiar to listeners over time. Next, let's discuss content consistency. Creating a reliable episode flow can keep listeners engaged and coming back. Here's how to do it. Set episode length. Stick to a consistent length, whether it's 20 minutes or an hour. It helps listeners plan when they'll tune in. Structured flow. Start with a quick intro, cover your main points, then wrap up with a closing and a call to action. Familiarity with the flow gives listeners a comfortable experience. Release schedule. Release episodes on a regular schedule. Whether weekly or bi-weekly, consistency builds trust and anticipation among your audience. Listeners love consistency. If they know they can count on you for high-quality content at a regular time, they're more likely to become loyal fans. Once your podcast is branded, let's focus on engagement. A big part of branding is building relationships with your listeners and growing your audience. Social media presence. Use platforms like Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn to connect with listeners and promote episodes. Share behind-the-scenes content, teasers, and listener polls. Engage directly. Respond to listener questions, comments, and reviews. This two-way interaction helps build a community around your podcast. Collaborations. Consider collaborating with other podcasters or inviting guests. It broadens your reach and introduces your show to new audiences. Your audience is part of your brand. The more you engage, the stronger your community and your brand becomes. Bringing it all together, brand consistency is key. From your logo to your episode, tone, and social media presence, keeping things cohesive across every aspect of your podcast helps build recognition. Consistency in voice and visuals. Use the same colors, fonts, and tone across all platforms. Reliable schedule and content style. Stick to your flow and schedule. It builds trust. Adapt when needed. As your podcast grows, evolve your brand to keep it fresh and relevant, but always in line with the identity you've established. A consistent brand is what makes your podcast memorable and recognizable, even as it evolves over time. And there you have it, how to build a strong, memorable brand for your podcast. Branding goes beyond just visuals. It's about connecting with your audience, creating a consistent experience, and offering value in a way only you can. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share with fellow podcasters. Until next time, keep creating and stay true to your brand.